Because remember, the computers are now doing self-improvement. They're learning how to plan, and they don't have to listen to us anymore. That's why it's underhyped. People do not understand what happens when you have intelligence at this level, which is largely free.
Ese era el ex CEO de Google, el Dr. Eric Schmidt, participando en una charla dentro del proyecto especial de estudios competitivos, conversando con Jean Messer sobre el futuro de la inteligencia artificial y la biotecnología. Y la verdad, fue una conversación realmente interesante. Vamos a profundizar en lo que dice, porque las implicaciones son bastante serias.
Because remember, the computers are now doing self-improvement. They're learning how to plan, and they don't have to listen to us anymore. We call that superintelligence, or ASI, artificial superintelligence. And this is the theory that there will be computers that are smarter than the sum of humans. The San Francisco consensus is this occurs within 6 years, just based on scaling. Now, in order to pull this off, you have to have an enormous amount of power. I was here yesterday testifying about this, and we need I can talk at some length about how many gigawatts and how many nuclear power plants and all that kind of stuff we can talk about separately. This path is not understood in our society. There's no language for what happens with the arrival of this. I wrote a book on this with Henry Kissinger called Genesis, which I recommend, obviously, because I wrote
Available.
it. Available in your usual places. But the important point is, this is happening faster than our society, our democracy, our laws will address. And there's lots of implications. That's why it's underhyped. People do not understand what happens when you have intelligence at this level, which is largely free.
Una de las cosas que comenta aquí es que en realidad esa tecnología está infravalorada. Sé que mucha gente hoy en día piensa que la inteligencia artificial está sobrevalorada, pero hay quienes opinan justo lo contrario, que está infravalorada. La lógica detrás de esto es que si la inteligencia artificial general o incluso una superinteligencia llegan a hacerse realidad, aunque sea mínimamente, las consecuencias serían tan enormes que merece la pena tomárselo en serio. Es como si te dijeran que hay un 50% de posibilidades de que en los próximos 10 años aparezcan unos alienígenas superinteligentes capaces de hacer prácticamente cualquier cosa. Probablemente no lo ignorarías, ¿verdad? Pues eso es un poco lo que él plantea, que esta tecnología está bastante menospreciada, porque si realmente llega a desarrollarse de forma repentina, el impacto en la sociedad sería tan profundo que el mundo literalmente no volvería a ser el mismo. Y eso es lo más importante aquí, que mucha gente no está de acuerdo sobre este punto. Algunos creen que la IA está sobrevalorada y en cierto modo puedo estar de acuerdo, porque en algunos aspectos lo está, pero lo que desde luego no está sobrevalorado es el posible impacto de una inteligencia superhumana. Aquí es donde entramos probablemente en la parte más importante del vídeo, y es donde Eric Schmidt hace una afirmación que, en mi opinión, cada día que pasa parece estar más cerca de hacerse realidad. Básicamente lo que dice es que llegará un punto en el que prácticamente todo el código será escrito por inteligencia artificial, y sinceramente creo que ya estamos trabajando en un nivel bastante alto de abstracción en ese sentido. Es decir, puede que seamos nosotros quienes ejecutamos o damos las instrucciones, pero la IA es, sin duda, la que está escribiendo la mayor parte del código a día de hoy. Resulta muy interesante escuchar su punto de vista, sobre todo porque no es el único que lo afirma.
In the next 1 year, the vast majority of programmers will be replaced by AI programmers. We also believe that within 1 year, you will have graduate-level mathematicians that are at the tippy top of graduate math programs. There's lots of reasons to think this is going to happen. This is the consensus. You go, okay, well, that's pretty interesting. Now, I can't do that kind of math. Very few people can do that math. How can the computer do that math better than anybody else? To some degree, it's because math has a simpler language than human language. So the way these algorithms actually work is they're doing essentially word prediction. So you take a sentence, you take a word out, and then it learns how to put the correct word back in. This is called the loss function. And it's optimized to do that at a scale that's unimaginable to us as humans. So you do the same thing for math. But there you use a conjecture and then a proof format through a protocol called Lean. In programming, it's pretty simple. You just keep writing code until you pass the programming test. So strangely, the first question I always ask programmers is, what language do you program in? And the correct answer is, it doesn't matter. Because you're trying to design for an outcome, you don't care what code is generated by the computer. This is a whole new world, okay?
Así que sí, se nos viene un mundo completamente nuevo. Como decía antes, no es solo Eric Schmidt. Fijaos en lo que comentó Dario Amodei hace poco en otra entrevista durante un panel. Básicamente dijo que dentro de 12 meses, es decir, en un año, la inteligencia artificial podría estar escribiendo prácticamente todo el código. Y hay que entender una cosa, si la IA sigue avanzando al ritmo que lo está haciendo, en un año pueden cambiar muchísimas cosas.
But now getting to kind of the job side of this, I do have a fair amount of concern about this. On one hand, I think comparative advantage is a very powerful tool. If I look at coding, programming, which is one area where AI is making the most progress, what we are finding is we are not far from a world, I think we'll be there in 3 to 6 months, where AI is writing 90% of the code. And then in 12 months, we may be in a world where AI is writing essentially all of the code.
Y aquí es donde la cosa se pone aún más interesante. Eric Schmidt comenta que, vale, la IA ya está escribiendo todo el código, pero ¿qué pasa después? ¿Qué ocurre en el segundo año? Atentos.
So that's 1 year, okay? What happens in 2 years? Well, I've just told you about reasoning, and I've told you about programming, and I've told you about math. Programming plus math are the basis of sort of our whole digital world. So the evidence and the claims from the research groups in OpenAI and Anthropic and so forth is that they're now somewhere around 10 or 20% of the code that they're developing in their research programs is being generated by the computer. That's called recursive self-improvement is the technical term. So what happens when this thing starts to scale? Well, a lot.
Vale, ¿y a dónde creéis que nos lleva la mejora recursiva de la propia inteligencia artificial? Y aquí es donde entramos de lleno en el debate sobre la AGI y la superinteligencia. Es justo en este punto cuando todo empieza a volverse bastante más serio, porque todos sabemos lo que ocurre cuando se alcanza una inteligencia artificial general. La sociedad cambia por completo.
One way to say this is that within 3 to 5 years, we'll have what is called general intelligence, AGI, which can be defined as a system that is as smart as the smartest mathematician, physicist, or artist, writer, thinker, politician, maybe not in the same level, but you get the idea. Just the creative industries and so forth, but imagine that in one computer. Okay, well that's pretty interesting. I call this, by the way, the San Francisco consensus, because everyone who believes this is in San Francisco. It may be the water. What happens when every single one of us has the equivalent of the smartest human on every problem in our pocket? So it means you have the best architect when you have an architecture problem.
Otra cosa de la que habla aquí son los agentes. Los agentes están creciendo día a día. Cada vez surgen nuevos marcos de trabajo, nuevos protocolos que se utilizan. Recientemente OpenAI lanzó GPT 4.1, que está centrado en los agentes, en cuanto a cómo está diseñado el modelo. Recientemente Google lanzó A2A, que es otro marco de trabajo para agentes. Anthropic también lanzó recientemente Claude MCP. Hay un montón de avances ocurriendo para hacer que los agentes sean mucho mejores. Él básicamente habla de esto como el futuro, y ahora os voy a mostrar por qué esto es tan importante.
Another thing that's going on is the development of agentic solutions, and agents are referred to systems that have input and output in memory, and they learn. An example here is that I want to buy another house. I happen to like Virginia. I grew up in Virginia. I say, find me a house in the greater McLean area. Look at that's one agent. Look at all the rules, figure out how big a house I can build. That's another agent. Do the transaction to buy the land, that's another agent. Design the house with a human architect, right? But sort of ignore them for most of the thing, but they have to sign it off. And then I approve it, and then find the contractor, right? Hire the contractor, pay the bills, and then at the end, sue the contractor for lack of performance. Okay? Now, I just gave you the stupidest possible explanation. I just described every business process, every government process, and every sort of academic process in our nation.
So it isn't just the programmers that are going to be out of work. We're all going to be out of work.
No, that's not a consequence. I'll come to that. But the reason I want to make the point here is that in the next year or two, this foundation is being locked in, and we're not going to stop it.
Claro, con el auge de los agentes, mucha gente se pregunta si la automatización va a acabar reemplazando a todos, y sinceramente estoy un poco dividida al respecto. Creo que esta vez la situación es diferente. Mientras que Eric Schmidt sostiene que en realidad siempre ha pasado lo mismo y simplemente encontramos nuevas cosas que hacer, yo personalmente tengo ciertas dudas sobre cómo los humanos encontrarán su papel en el mundo. Pero por supuesto me encantaría conocer vuestra opinión. Eric Schmidt básicamente dice que al final todo irá bien, como siempre ha sido en el pasado.
And by the way, on the jobs thing, everyone assumes that automation will eliminate jobs. If you look at the history of automation ever since the looms in 300 years ago, the jobs are changed, but more jobs are created than destroyed. In this case, you'd have to convince me that this time is different. If you look in Asia, where they, for whatever reason, are choosing not to have children, the Asian reproduction rate is in the order of 1.0 or lower. So they're rapidly disappearing. So the Asian countries are very, very quickly automating. The tools that I'm describing will allow the few humans that will be working very hard in 30 or 40 years if these trends continue. The rest of us will be dependent on those hardworking humans. It'll make their productivity much greater.
Y por supuesto, otro punto a mencionar es el hecho de que ocurrió el momento DeepSeek. Aquí habla en cierto modo de que China no está bromeando cuando se trata de inteligencia artificial. Están tomando esto muy en serio, más en serio que cualquier otra cosa antes. Así que sin duda, esto es algo que Estados Unidos también debe tomarse muy en serio. Por cierto, voy a tener la newsletter más grande sobre ella en español y para que veas que voy en serio, voy a estar regalando esta masterclass sobre Midjourney y este curso sobre DeepSeek o no sé, todos estos documentos y descuentos a todos los usuarios gratis de la newsletter. Lo único que tienes que hacer es registrarte con tu correo electrónico mediante el enlace en la descripción. Y tranquilo, no mandamos publicidad. Solo te mandaremos 2 reportes semanales con nuevas noticias, estudios, nuevos empleos, herramientas y mucho más. Alertaia.com, solo para los que no se quieren quedar atrás.
In China, the DeepSeek moment is equivalent to our ChatGPT moment. I was there with Henry, and this is what happens when you're talking to the Chinese about AI with Henry. And this means we are alive and we're listening to you. Thank you very much, right? That's not what they're doing anymore. When DeepSeek showed up and our stock market lost $1 trillion in one day, all of a sudden they began to understand the scale of what it was. So now there is a massive program in China to accelerate these things. I had thought, Illy and I and some of the other people in this room worked really hard on these chip controls. And the chip controls have been, in my view, largely effective. How did China get around them? Well, some of it was straightforward theft and evasion of the tariffs, but they're sufficiently smart. They created new algorithms that used different kinds of computing to move forward. Because China operates in open source, that is, they release the software to everyone, there are 2 things that happen. We Americans immediately saw their idea and incorporated it in our own, so thank you very much, China, you invented something new. We immediately incorporated it. But second, because it's free, the proliferation issues around Chinese models have now become a very big deal. And our government is trying to figure out, without success so far, how to handle this question. It's a very tricky question. We call these wicked hard problems.
Una de las estrategias que el gobierno de Estados Unidos ha intentado implementar es restringir el acceso de los estadounidenses a DeepSeek. Están considerando, por ejemplo, prohibirlo en las tiendas de aplicaciones. También están valorando limitar cómo los proveedores de la nube podrían ofrecer modelos de DeepSeek. Hay una gran cantidad de formas en las que el gobierno de Estados Unidos está planeando abordar esto, y no creo que implique integrar DeepSeek en la cultura estadounidense. La competitividad de Estados Unidos es algo que realmente desean para el país, y no creo que quieran que los modelos chinos se expandan en su ecosistema. Recordad lo que os dije antes, que China está tomando esto muy en serio. ¿Qué pasa si China nos adelanta o por el contrario, estamos tan por delante que ellos empiezan a preocuparse? Es ahí donde tenemos que empezar a pensar en cosas como ataques a centros de datos siendo bombardeados y por supuesto la destrucción mutua asegurada. Básicamente aquí es donde Eric Schmidt habla de que si un país está tan por delante que otro, podrían intentar socavar esa ventaja. Por ejemplo, robando los pesos de los modelos o haciendo muchas otras cosas. Esto ha sido algo ampliamente discutido por aquellos que intentan predecir el futuro de la inteligencia artificial.
we're having this whole debate in our nation about what to do about Iran's nuclear program, and I'm not an expert in that. But these are the kind of conversations that happen here in DC. So when we get to the point where China is N months ahead, are we willing to bomb their data centers? My favorite example here is I've been working on this. I was talking to somebody who said, the answer is obvious. I said, what? The good lady and the bad guy. We agree to a treaty where each of us puts dynamite on each other's electricity supply. You get to blow up my electricity if you get mad, and I get to blow up your electricity if I get, you get the idea. Now,
Some would say we've already done, that's already happened.
well,
Things that
kinetic attack on people's data centers is probably an act of war.
Yeah.
Eric Schmidt habla sobre el descubrimiento automático de fármacos y su posible síntesis, lo cual tiene implicaciones realmente sorprendentes, porque significa que en el futuro encontrar curas para muchas enfermedades y dolencias será tan fácil como presionar un botón y esperar a que la IA lo resuelva. Además menciona cómo ha financiado una startup que está trabajando precisamente en esto.
I'm the primary funder of a particular group that has built a model. It first learned how to do chemistry, and it was trained as a foundation model for chemistry, and it's attached to a robotic lab. And what this model does is it generates hypotheses for drugs of one kind or another, and it just generates them. God knows if they're right. And then overnight, the robotic lab tests them and gives a report overnight, and then it starts again. And the reason I'm mentioning this is the future model of the fusion of AI and bio, right? The AI system generates all sorts of candidates to reduce the, essentially the search space. If you think about it algorithmically, it's an exponential with too many degrees of exponential. So you have to come up with some way of reducing the space. So this particular group is using AI to reduce the space, run the things, and so forth. Their objective, we'll see if they pull it off, this is a research project, is to identify all human druggable targets within the next 2 years. If that occurs, then that information goes straight into the drug industry. Now, it's a different way of thinking, and it's profound in that it gives them the targets they need to go build drugs against. That's interesting to me. It's the combination of AI and a robotic lab that does something in a wet lab, essentially. So one model that you should think about is wet labs will be roboticized, and the wet labs will have they're not humanoid robots, they're arm robots, and they go boom, 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 and they do the pipetting and so forth and so on, and they do it 24 hours a day. That's a major change in the way the biotech industry works.
Y la verdad, no hace falta ni entrar en las implicaciones de todo esto. Si pudieras simplemente presionar un botón y la IA comenzara a trabajar en algunos de nuestros problemas más comunes, la expectativa de vida seguiría aumentando, algo que ya se ha predicho desde hace tiempo, especialmente con los avances en las tecnologías de IA. Y claro, si esto funciona, si realmente llega a funcionar, podríamos estar a punto de alcanzar lo que se llama la velocidad de escape de la longevidad, es decir, la posibilidad de vivir para siempre. Sé que suena completamente loco, pero en teoría podría ser posible. Y es justo aquí donde él responde a alguien del público que le pregunta si esto es realmente una posibilidad.
Hello, greetings, Dr. Schmidt. Mini background, I'm a recent PhD in biomedical engineering. Very excited, I've been following you. Just a very quick question. Do you think there's implications for ASI via drug discovery for like curing cancer and or personalized medicine? Just something very quick.
Yes, because under the assumptions of superintelligence, these are systems that see things that we don't see. And so the assumption is that ASI, for example, could understand biological and cellular mechanisms that you are an expert in and I'm not, at a level that humans will not. So that's why this is such a big deal. We've always assumed that humans would know, there would be at least one human, right, we call these people polymaths, that would understand these things. We're going to end up in a world maybe 10 years from now where we won't actually understand why, but you as our scientist will say, I use it every day. When I was at college, I was studying quantum physics, and my friend who was a graduate student who was much better than I, and I said, is this stuff actually true? You know, it's like too weird to be true. And he said, yes, we use it every day. And I imagine in 10 years, some young student will come up to you and say, is this stuff true? And you'll say, frankly, I use it every day. No human understands it. What an interesting situation for you as now a senior researcher 10 years from now to have to deal with.
No fui la única en compartir esta opinión. Demis Hassabis, en una entrevista hace unos 2 días, dijo exactamente lo mismo. Llevan trabajando en esto desde hace bastante tiempo. No es algo que haya surgido simplemente porque ahora la IA y los modelos de lenguaje grandes sean populares. Esto ha sido un proyecto en desarrollo durante mucho tiempo, y ahora solo estamos comenzando a ver pequeños indicios de que realmente podría ser algo en el futuro. Tal vez no en el futuro inmediato, pero sin duda en algún momento cercano.
I think maybe in the next 10-15 years we can actually have a real crack at solving all disease. That's the mission of Isomorphic, and I think with AlphaFold we showed what the potential was to sort of do what I like to call science at digital speed. And why couldn't that also be applied to finding medicines? And so my hope is 10-15 years time we'll look back on the medicine we have today a bit like how we look back on medieval times and how we used to do medicine then. You know, and that would be, I think, the most incredible benefit we could imagine from AI.
Si has llegado hasta este punto del vídeo, dale like, suscríbete y déjame saber qué piensas en los comentarios.